Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to Play Club, Trouble in Mind by Alice Childress. I'm Rick Dildine, Artistic Director at ASF. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. It is my pleasure to welcome our guest tonight. Donnetta Lavinia Grays is an actor whose credits include Broadway and off-Broadway. She has been in so many television shows, folks. She's an award-winning playwright and screenwriter. She also went on the road with me across the South in the State of the South tour. Would you please welcome Donnetta Grays? Hello, Donnetta.
Hello, hello. How are you, Rick?
I'm well. And Joy Vandervort-Cobb is an actor, director, and educator. She recently retired as a professor of theater at College of Charleston and is now the associate artistic director at Pure Theater in South Carolina. Welcome, Joy.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. I am going to introduce you to a little bit about Alice Childress. I'm going to try to keep it tight, but I'm not really sure I can do that. I'm going to start with a quote. She said, "I never planned to become a writer. Early writing was done against my will. Time, events, and grandmother Eliza's brilliance taught me to rearrange circumstances into plays, stories, novels, scenarios, and teleplays." She was born in Charleston, South Carolina, where I happen to be currently, in October of 1916. And she died in New York in August of 94. She also had a career that spanned 40 years, 4 decades in this business. She grew up with her maternal grandmother, who dropped out of school in the 5th grade. Her grandmother had 7 kids, none of whom moved past the 8th grade. She moved to Harlem to live with her grandmother when her parents split up here in Charleston, and she was about 9. So she was educated within the public school systems in New York. She attributes her desire, her love, her ability to write to her grandmother. Her grandmother used to do this, play this game with her. She would take her to the window in the apartment they were living in, and her grandmother would point out passersby on the street and ask young Alice questions about the people. Who were they? What kinds of families did they have? What did they do for a living? What was their moral turpitude? Her grandmother would challenge any simple answers with a challenge for more detailed information. And at the end of the game, she would make Alice write it all down as a story. Her grandmother took her to cultural and community activities, to the church, to museums, parks, neighborhoods, made up of different cultures, theaters, things that are so available in New York City. And again, question her and make her write the experience down. She also said that she had teachers in school, one who threatened to fail any student if they didn't become really strong readers. She said, "I'll keep you in 5th grade until you're 21. And another one who introduced her to the public library, where she could take out 2 books a day for free. She also talked about the women in her grandmother's church who testified about family tragedies or triumphs they were living. Every influence I read about Ms. Childress was the strength of the women in her life.
Yeah.
She left high school before finishing because she was responding to the trauma of losing both her mother and her grandmother in a year. She said, "I did not finish high school. I did not go to college, but I am a Radcliffe alumnus on the basis of my work, without a degree through a Harvard appointment. I am not crediting the Harlem schools with my education. I credit my grandmother. I credit private study and finding out what I wanted to know in life." She was a scholar at the Radcliffe Institute for Independent Studies. 11 years at the American Negro Theater, and if I had a whole 2 hours, I'd explain all about them because they were amazing. She's both actress and writer there. She worked with ants. They said they were like a colony of ants. Everybody worked for the higher good. So she did lots of jobs there. She also was in Ana Lucasta, which made history with its move to Broadway, and it earned her a Tony nod. Her first play that was a commercial success was Florence, which was also her mother's name. And she supposedly penned this overnight as a bet with Sidney Poitier, who was also in American Negro Theater, with whom she argued when he said that in a play about Negroes and whites, only a life and death thing like lynching is interesting on stage. Her intention, and you see it in all of her work, is to set out more honestly and portray female characters to challenge the persisting assumptions that the only important race drama was sensationalized, male-inscribed drama. Florence made a small but significant dent in reconceptualizing the potential of Black theater. Following a couple of other shows, a number of years of absence, Alice began a direct attack on the theater's failure to present the ordinary Black American woman's experience void of stereotypes. She contrasted the falsely romantic stock figures of Black women in literature and created the aging Black female protagonist imbued with the spirit and the essence of her grandmother, Eliza. Her characters may be impoverished and lacking formal education, but they have a love of art and learning, along with fierce personal pride and independence, and it makes them admirable. By and large, her Black female characters strive to erase the misnomer of matriarch, often ascribed to Black women, and to inscribe their own definitions of self. They begin to see their missions as claiming artistic control, mediating their anger constructively, and exposing white women's and Black men's culpability in perpetuating racism and sexist oppression. She's greatly published. She wrote books. A Hero Ain't Nothing But a Sandwich, which I remember. She won the Obie Award for the best off-Broadway play for Trouble in Mind, the play we're directing. She also directed this piece. She was a lot of first in that. She wrote a screenplay for A Hero Ain't Nothing But a Sandwich, starring Paul Winfield and Cicely Tyson. Her play Wedding Band, a love story in black and white, my first introduction to her, was a story of interracial love, was commissioned and co-directed by Alice with Joseph Papp as part of New York City Public Theater Shakespeare Festival in 1972, before it was adapted for television in 1973. She personalizes social issues such as poverty, racism, addiction, and child abuse. When she died, she was writing a novel about her African great-grandmother who was a slave until she was 12. And we pulled this quote and this image because we both love it. I continue to create because writing is a labor of love and also an act of defiance, a way to light a candle in a gale wind.
I'll tell you what, Alice Childress is sort of the church that I worship at, right? She really, really is. So many things inside of her biography align with mine, you know. I didn't know she was an October baby. That's a plus. That's a plus. But you know, that she is a performer, writer, and what I love also about her work is that she, you know, talking about the ordinary people that she writes, she also disrupts this sort of narrative of the South in a way that I really appreciate.
Okay, come on, speak to it, speak to it.
That she empowers that Black Southern voice in such a beautiful way, in such a beautiful, beautiful way. I want to get us into the history of the play itself.
Very well.
Okay, let me do that for you. So I'm gonna be reading from selected plays of Alice Childress, edited by Kathy A. Perkins, if you want to follow along. Alice Childress's breakthrough play was Trouble in Mind, which premiered at the Greenwich Muse Theater, in an interracial theatrical organization in New York City, November 3rd, 1955. Trouble, which she also directed, as Joy mentioned before, ran for 91 performances and garnered Childress numerous accolades. Childress attributes the opportunity to her longtime friend, Clarice Taylor, who told her that the Muse had an empty slot in their 1955-56 season. Childress remembers working on Trouble in Mind while performing in a production in Chicago. Now, just a little side note, for those who don't know who Clarice Taylor, she played Cliff Huxtable's mom in The Cosby Show. Okay, all right, just to give us a little framework. Trouble in Mind, a play within a play, dramatizes the courage and determination of a middle-aged Black woman, Willetta Mayer, played by Taylor, who, while appearing in a play about lynching, challenges the interpretation of the white playwright and the white director. In a case of life mirroring art, Childress had similar problems with interpretation with her own white producer when he threatened to cancel the off Broadway run if she did not end the play happily. And according to Childress, happy endings were expected in the commercial theater at this time. Intimidated and unsure to the ways of commercial theater, Childress gave in. And she says, ooh, and this takes me out. I knew I was doing the wrong thing, but at the same time, I shakingly felt maybe I could be wrong. When everyone around you is saying, this is wrong, you can grow uncertain. They might be right or wrong. I've known many writers who have told me they've regretted making changes, people with hits. You can feel that way even though a show is running, mad as hell because the main thing you truly believed in has been changed. When you hear we're not going to do it, we're going to close down early because of one thing, and all the actors have studied their parts, and if you don't know if you have the right to snatch the play. I made no money off of Trouble in Mind. We had standing room only, but I made $40 a week as a writer. Ooh, I'm going to unpack that on the back end of this. Childress, like the other writers that she mentioned, ultimately regretted her decision. And when the play was published, she restored the original ending. And later, Childress was asked to move the play to Broadway with a series of rewrites. Ooh, Lord, more rewrites. Her frustration with the constant request to accommodate the various white producers resulted in her refusing to continue rewriting. She says, while it was playing at the Muse, it was optioned for Broadway, and I was so delighted, as this was my first try at a big stage. They had me rewrite for 2 years.
2 years.
2 years until I couldn't recognize the play one way or the other. Then after one person dropped it, I think another person dropped it. And then it just sat there and I felt like I didn't want to do it anymore. Now, since then, she's had, of course, numerous regional productions of Trouble in Mind. And thankfully, I think Roundabout is going to be doing their a Broadway production of it this fall. That's what's on the docket, of course, because of COVID. But I want to talk a little bit about this whole changing the play to suit producer or audience or director. A couple things come to mind. That whole idea of who has control of this story, right? It's what she's talking about in Trouble in Mind. Who gets to tell whose story and why? Who has control of the story? Is the author the authority of the story? Is the character that they are trying to write, are they the authority of the story? And when you're being asked to write, to sort of hold an audience, to make them comfortable to the point where you snatch away the thing that is at the very root of the reason why you wrote the play. It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking to me.
What did you think of the ending and the sharpness therein?
To me, the happiness comes with her sort of standing her ground in that moment. That to me is the joy-filled thing, sort of absent of the scripture at the end. Yeah, for me, it is because she took that stand.
Right.
That to me is the joyful ending part of it.
Okay, I get that. Yeah.
Right?
And I think that, looking at it with the mindset that I have of today, right? I wondered, she said, they're not going to call me. I bet you I don't get that phone call for tomorrow's rehearsal, but I'm going to show up anyway.
But he's going to have to fire me.
He's going to have to fire me. He's going to have to fire me to me. Right.
That's
and
right.
yeah, that is claiming your moment. You are taking control of the entire instrument that starts from here and moves on through the soul. Um, Interestingly enough, I didn't find that. That's the change I expected in her
Mm-hmm.
as she became more and more aware of what she was being asked to do,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's so interesting, and keeping in mind while thinking about that ending, well, thinking about the entire play,
Mm-hmm.
and all the iterations she went through, 2 years of
Yeah.
rewrites,
Yeah.
so many that actors began to drop, right? And
Yeah.
when they asked her to change the ending for the muse, she said, these actors have worked, they know the lines, the designers are there, I'll be the cause of everybody losing their gig.
Yeah.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
as an African American artist, you recognize
Yeah.
what that means
Yeah.
for everybody in the space,
That's right.
you know.
So Joy, I want to pull back just a little bit
Mhm.
and ask you how you came to Alice Childress. What was your first experience with her, and how did you become introduced to her?
My first experience was the ABC show, the ABC production of Trouble in no Wedding Band, a love
Oh,
story in black and white. I
okay.
can actually remember seeing it on television. Of course, I would have forgotten that by the time I moved to Charleston and was a professor and all, um, until I started reading the script again. And I was like, oh my God, I know this. Why do I know this? This is so familiar. I realized I knew it. I knew it. I understood it, as not the first time, because I had seen this very kind of disturbing film that I probably didn't understand. 73, 74. So I was a teenager,
Mm-hmm.
but probably just catching something on TV with my grandmother.
Yeah.
Um, then I came here to Charleston and started teaching at the College of Charleston. And my focus was African American theater and performance. And so I taught a history lit class based on the African American canon. And of course, she was in there. Plus, she was a Charlestonian.
Right.
And I was finding that my students, who were from all around the state, mostly at that point, not early on in my career is when I taught a lot about Childress, mostly from within the state of South Carolina, but having no icons to hold on to.
Mm-hmm.
And I was so giggly to introduce this woman who was born in Charleston, and to introduce her to my class as, she got the key for the
Yeah.
state. She'd gotten these awards for the work she had done in the business here, at the State House and all. So she was a big deal. She was particularly a big deal for my generally impoverished Black students
Mm-hmm.
to lean into the possibility of. I found I taught a lot of playwrights that taught about leaning into the possibility. But if
Mm-hmm.
nobody demonstrates that to you, you don't know what that is. How were you introduced to Alice Childress?
Well, I think I was one of those students in your class, though. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember making that connection very, very distinctly, that she was South Carolinian, that her language really tore through me. And I actually got a chance to direct Florence, which was my first big directing project for my directing class at College of Charleston too.
Hmm.
So just completely fell in love with her, and and saw her career as sort of a roadmap for mine. And she has since become like my North Star
Mm.
as far as playwriting is concerned. And so I attribute a lot of
Wow.
my form and how I kind of see the characters that I build to her.
Yeah.
Right? We do have a comment here. She said, Mary says, I
Right.
agree that the ending is happy as Willetta took a stand and is at peace with that stand. However, this is a play within a play where an actor is asked to play a part which she disagrees with, or a line she disagrees with. She was hired to do that part. Surely many actors play parts they do not like. Ooh. Do you have any sympathy for the director or the writer? Okay. This is a great question because it kind of, ooh,
You get to dance in all of those places, don't you, Donnetta?
yes I do,
Mhm,
because
mhm.
I will not disclose the piece that I was in, but I had sort of this very same thing when it came to uh, a queer character that I was playing. And I was like, oh no, I hadn't realized what I got myself into. And so there was, yes, the obligation of a thing, but I think you also, we have to like set up the time frame too, right?
Right, right.
Because we cannot sort of compare this like 2021 experience to what was this play take place 1950
50,
55 54.
yeah, yeah.
Two very different things. There is a what is opportunity now and what is opportunity then, very different conversations, right?
Really?
um well,
Okay,
I
go
feel you,
ahead.
I
But
feel
we
you.
have more agency
We
today.
have more agency,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
would
yeah,
say,
yeah.
right? We have more agency. You're right about that. I think, yeah, the power of no, like holding that power. But do I have any sympathy for the writer? I think for me, if I am telling the story
Hmm.
of someone whose experience I do not claim, I do not have, it is my responsibility as a writer to listen to that person's experience. In that essence, no, I'm not the authority in it. I say to people, well, who can tell, who are people, can anyone tell someone's story? I say, yeah, you go ahead and tell it. But you're going to have to take the risk of being wrong about it.
Hmm.
So when someone checks you on that experience, listen and adapt to it. So it's whose voice is being listened to in a story that's supposed to represent them. That's the thing that that's shocking to me, you know.
Hmm.
What was it like having directed it and then revisiting it now? How is it
Oh,
relevant for you today, Miss Joy?
Donnetta, reading it this time,
Mm-hmm.
it's experiencing it in 2021. It was such a different experience for me.
Yeah.
I remember that I was working with a student body, and it
Mm-hmm.
meant that I had to do certain things to get the piece where I needed it to be,
Right.
right? Um, but historically speaking, reading this now and saying, wow, how prescient
Yeah.
my sister Childress
Yeah.
was not something I would have noticed in the 90s when I was doing this,
Yeah.
because there weren't Black bodies dropping in the street so publicly
Yeah. Yeah.
as there are now. These discussions weren't being had
Mm-hmm.
as they are now, not outside of the academy,
Mm-hmm.
not outside of that conversation you have as a family, a Black family specifically, because that's the family I know, about what's happening in the world and where you fit and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
That wasn't happening the way it's happening now,
Right.
in light of this whole hashtag say their names.
Yeah.
So it hit me both as an actor, as a director, and as a Black woman.
Yeah.
It makes me want to do this play immediately,
Mm-hmm.
just to have dialogue about it afterwards.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. It was as if someone was writing it right now. I said, it was every single thing that we talk about, that we've been talking about for the last year as this sort of reckoning in the theaters happened. And I was thinking about specifically how Manners situates this play as a good deed, right? As a sort of gift to the Black community. There's a moment where
An unearned gift.
and yes, so here and this kind of ties into this thing that was new for me in reading it again, about who actually holds power in this space, right? immediately, superficially, you think it's Manners who holds the power. Then it sort of shifts to Willetta. The person who actually, for me, upon reading it this time, was the fulcrum of that power shift was Sheldon. You know, I hadn't put that together before.
Right.
Because here you have, and this is what I love about Alice Childress. She takes the lowest person on the totem pole on the outset. You see him, and he's like suffering through trying to read his lines, and he's like, yeah, you know, I got it, can't hardly hear whatever. But then he brings in what the reality of the experience of witnessing a lynching is. And she gives him, after he has struggled with language the whole time, space. And the fulcrum actually tilts inside of the story.
Look at that. I trained this child. I just
you
want
see
y'all
what
to know
happened. You
that.
see
Go
what
ahead.
you can, right? And so then
proud.
that becomes the engine by which Willetta can go, no, everything is confirmed, affirmed. No. Right. Even if Sheldon doesn't sort of like take all of that in, and at the end of it, he's like, is that what y'all wanted to hear? You know? It shifts everything. But don't you, I feel like there's something kind of beautifully shocking about it. There's an everydayness to this kind of play. Like they're like the language to me, it boggles the mind how quick and snappy and conversational the language is. And then Willetta's like, wait a minute, you don't listen to me. And she kind of puts a puncture in how the day is going. So that abruptness to me is really satisfying, where it's kind of like, oh, what just happened? Like the it's like the bottom sinks. So it isn't particularly neat, which I really kind of like, you know? So, and you know, I like a little mess. So, but it left me feeling a little like disoriented. And I think, and I feel like that for me is really satisfying. I don't know if I needed like a completeness to it. I think it's like, okay, you know what? I started some mess and here we are. It's a messy day. And it's like,
there's a question that we posed to one another that I think this play bespeaks. What happens to a dialogue deferred? And I know it's a riff on the Langston Hughes thing. What happens to a dream deferred?
Yeah.
But what happens to a dialogue deferred?
Yeah.
This piece speaks, in my estimation, directly and specifically to that.
Yeah.
We keep disallowing the truths of these discussions. We're getting better at it.
Yeah.
Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
Hashtag Stop Asian Hate. We're getting better at it. We ain't there yet. And we are still not able to hold a clear and consistent dialogue with those in positions of power who are in the place where they can make a change.
Yeah.
And she illustrates for us in this play what positionality looks like.
Yeah.
What this liberal idea of, look what I'm doing for your people.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Because right after Sheldon is like, is that what you want to hear? And the energy just drops in the room. And the question is like, oh gosh, what can we do? What can we do? And Manor says, we're doing a play. Took me out. I did want to go back to one of the earlier questions about how Willetta is presented as a woman who loves the theater in the beginning. I think she ends up in a similar place. I think in order to love something, you have to call it out.
We're so thrilled. We are at the end.
Oh my gosh. How did we get to the end? I told you, Joy. I said we actually need 2 hours because we
ain't done.
We ain't done quite yet. We need 15 more minutes.
Hang up the phone,
okay, 20 more minutes. No,
yeah, we need 45 more minutes.
Just 45 more minutes, and then we need to catch up too.
Y'all, This
Yeah.
has been incredible. Um, I know the folks at home and around the country that have been watching. I mean, the energy you have brought to this and the passion. Thank y'all so much for bringing this time together. Thank you for the folks that joined in and questions and comments. But I am so grateful, Donnetta, Joy. Thank you for coming to our virtual stage, and I cannot wait till you are back on our physical stages.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So thank you all so much. Be well, be safe.
Thank you, Miss Fry.
Until next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thank you.
all.